Tom Edwards. I'm an instructor down at South Central College down in Mankato, technically North Mankato. This is kind of a follow-on to Peter's Drupal course, so if any of you were in that one with him, or not course, but presentation, we're going to refer to some of the same things that he talked about, themes, not themes, but modules and some other things. And so we aren't going to spend a lot of time going into depth on that. We can later if you wish. What I want to talk about is a problem that I've encountered with a few applications. There is an issue, let's say, with databases and database management, how it's integrated into the content management system and all that sort of business. And so this little presentation has no school solution to the question. It's just to bring up some things to think about when you're designing a web app or a website that needs a database on the application side. And so we want to talk a little bit about some of the advantages and disadvantages of putting all your data into that same database that powers Drupal, or that content management system, Drupal in this case, or running it as a standalone database. So we'd all like to have access to these toys. Okay? If you go out to Amazon, they've got all this big stuff. And so there you don't really have to worry about stuff like this. You can have your databases running on different servers, and they're all wired together, and they have backups and all that sort of thing. But that's not always the case. Like I said, we're from Mankato, about an hour and a half south of here. Most of our customers are small businesses. They may go with a hosting service, with a virtual machine someplace. I think I just talked with some of the IP, that's one of your IP house guys? Okay. Depending on how much money they have, things like that, they probably can't afford to have a lot of infrastructure in-house. If they do, it'd be rather minimal. So even though we like to have all this stuff, this is what we normally end up with. Okay? And again, down in our part of the state, there's a lot of small businesses that may have their own machines. They may have somebody taking care of them for them. Their IT person is both their webmaster, their web programmer, their network engineer, and their hardware repairman. If that's the case or not, there are even other businesses that use virtual hosting that have the same sort of situation. If you go out to Amazon Web Services, you can get one of their virtual machines, and it's a dual-core virtual machine, and that's pretty much what you got. You don't have this whole big farm unless you're a big corporation and can afford all that stuff. So when you're thinking about doing a web-based application, some of the things you think about, these are typical questions. What is our infrastructure? Do we have the machinery on hand? Do we not have any machinery? You have to borrow from somebody else. Is it a local hosting company? Are you doing business with the local phone company or the local cable provider? Are you doing business with a web hosting service that kind of takes care of your part of the world? Where's the money? That's always the big thing. How much you're going to spend. Right now, Amazon, if you're a new client, you can get a free small virtual server for free for a year. Not a whole lot to it, but if you have a small web operation, it's probably sufficient for that. Just like they kind of try and get you hooked into the system there, and then you'll become a regular customer. Are you going to have multiple database servers? Again, if you're thinking about the physical layout of your place, or if you're going with a hosting company, are you going to have multiple virtual machines that are going to run these databases? How big an operation is this going to be? If you're going to have one server, be it physical or virtual, are you going to run one database instance? Are you going to run multiple instances? Are you going to run an Oracle database for something, a MySQL for something else? What are you going to do? How many threads and processes are you going to have? A lot of the MySQL databases, when you start them up on your typical Linux box, spin off 3 or 4 threads that are sitting out there waiting to answer requests, just like the web servers do. So these are all kind of some things to think about, because they're all going to impact the load on the machine. And what we're going to look at here is not so much the hardware side of it, but the steps you're going to have to go through in both cases to get something like this up and running, and then maintaining it. So let's just say, for example, that we've decided to do this. We're going to use a lab stack, okay? And we're going to use Drupal for the CMS. Other content management systems work as well if you have access to the underlying database. We're going to do one or two. If we're going to do two, is that second, is the application database going to run on the same machine as the Drupal stuff, or is it going to be on its own machine? How are we going to do that? And here's some disadvantages. And I'm going to ask for input from the group here because we got some good Drupal people here, plus a lot of folks who have look like they have some IT experience. At least some of you are missing some of your hair, like the rest of us.
Or we colored it.
Or that word. So, if I've got a separate database for my application, it's not merged in with the content management system database. As database people, and that's my background. I've been in the computer biz since 1968, and most of it has been in the database world. We like to keep things separated out. We don't want to have the inventory stuff in the same database as the payroll stuff for a lot of reasons. So that's a good thing. I can use my choice of IDEs to develop my database applications. Peter, what besides PHP, MySQL, what else do you guys use anything else for that end of stuff?
Well, we do ASP.NET and SQL Server.
Okay. And so you have some graphical tools they can use to...
Yeah. So we either work in the Eclipse environment or we work in Visual Studio.
Okay. So you really have your choice then of the tools you want to use to lay out your database and all the software that goes with it. You can pick your PHP editors and all that sort of thing. You don't have a lot of restriction. So you have some choice in that matter. Number 3 is a simpler testing environment, and I'll show this a little bit in an example later on. You can automate your testing, especially on the command line side. You can have scripts set up that automatically install, upload all your test data, and just wipe the database out and recreate it as you're going through all your testing stuff. If you're doing this from the command line or from a PHP MyAdmin, for example, it simplifies things a lot. It also gives you the chance to have I hate that word richer, but people use that a lot. You can create a user interface that can maybe do some things that these content management systems still can't do yet. They're getting a lot better than what they used to be, but there's still a lot of stuff you can do in code that you write yourself versus something that comes from the CMS. Some disadvantages. If I've got more than one database, right away that doubles my administration effort. Now I got to have 2 user IDs, 2 passwords, multiple machines, all that sort of stuff. I've got multiple databases to worry about as far as backup, restore, things like that. So that increases labor cost. If I'm doing the application in something other than the actual Drupal content management system, my user interface might not be consistent. I've got a perfect example of this. I won't show you that I'm here, but if somebody wants to look at it later, there's Peter's seen this. It's a group that does a lot of sports history, and I don't know who they had to pick the colors, but it's just gross. But anyway, they have the application database is just regular hard-coded web pages that are linked to from inside Drupal. So they use Drupal for all their news and blogging and stuff like that, and they link out to this other thing for all the historical archive stuff. The only thing that's consistent is a nice bright yellow color of the pages. The apps have to be hand-coded. Every time you have people hand-coding things, there's chances for typing mistakes and who knows what else. So that's a disadvantage. Looking at this from the people who have been in the software development, I don't know what your backgrounds are. Can you think of reasons why I would want to have things where I hand code them versus using code that's generated?
Flexibility.
Okay.
Creativity.
Okay.
Bugs.
So I can think back to the days when I worked up here as a consultant years ago, when they went to the COBOL, the 4GL languages, these COBOL code generators that just generated horrible code, and you had to go back and clean it all up afterwards. And it was much nicer just to code the stuff by hand from the beginning, given all the typos and everything else besides that. So there are some advantages and some disadvantages to doing this. What if we want to integrate our application database, our application data into the CMS database. Simplifies management. I only have one database to worry about. It has a smaller vulnerability footprint. Every time you get another program running, another process running on your machine, that's another place the bad guys can get in. We only have one database worrying about backup and restore. And I know there are tools, third-party tools out there that can automate all that process. Again, we're talking about smaller businesses that might not have the staff, time, and more money to support that kind of stuff. There's less hand coding. Everything you're going to do is done inside Drupal using the Drupal tools. I would say no hand coding, if any at all. The user interface is consistent. Everything looks the same. Look and feel, all the theme, all that stuff is carried over. Disadvantages. On the Drupal side, the Drupal database, if you ever look inside one of those things, inside the MySQL database, it is complex looking. I mean, and there's reason to the way you do things. There's method to their madness, but it's not really as obvious to a lot of people as if you had developed the database yourself. Maybe you only need a 4 or 5 table database. If you're going to start doing that inside a Drupal database and expect to have access to the raw data itself, it's a much more complex situation. Testing is more time consuming. Again, to have automated testing tools that reach down inside the Drupal database to find your application data can be problematic. And again, as database people, we hate to have stuff commingled. Now we've got theme stuff mixed in with accounting stuff, mixed in with inventory stuff, and it just doesn't seem right. From a pure database standpoint, if the thing is set up right, it probably doesn't matter. It just doesn't seem right. So, anybody was at the party last night? Okay, did you have any of that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, we have a little example situation where I show you 2 different takes on a web application. This is what we want. We want a beer, right? Here's our problem. Even though I teach in New Ulm, I practice in Mankato, I'm from New Ulm. If any of you have been to Bachfest at the Shell Brewery in February or March in 3 feet of snow with 5,000 people, and you're down there by the band.
All of them drinking.
Yes, and the bar is way back there. Now, wouldn't it be nice if you get on your mobile device and tell them where you're at and what you want, and then the bartender magically shows up with the beers? Okay, that would be good. All right. So we have a solution to that. Small, simple website. I just took the default. We're not going to turn in on any of Peter's stuff here that he did in the previous presentation about theming and all that sort of business. We just took the average full default website. The only thing I replaced was the graphic. So that was that. All right. Before we get into this, I have to make some certain disclaimers, because software developers are like authors. Everybody is critical of your stuff. Okay, everybody has their own the own way to do it. So, because this was just a quick demo, we haven't done any fancy database stuff. We haven't done any fancy PHP stuff. There's hardly any comments in there. We aren't worried about security at this point. There's all sorts of stuff that should be put in there to keep people from doing drive-by downloads and that sort of stuff. And I have not purposely obfuscated any of the code. There might be some in there, but I didn't do it on purpose. So as we say in school, do as I say, not as I do. So what did we work with? Well, we got a version 7 Drupal. I took the minimum installation option. I know when Peter did his demo, you did the typical one.
Yeah.
I did the minimum installation, so I had no content types in there, I had no menus, I had none of that stuff. It was just the base core. We had to add these modules. The ones with asterisks are used in the version of this application where everything is consolidated into one database. The ones without asterisks are those are the only ones I needed in the version of the app where we have a separate application database, separate from the CMS database. So, MySQL configuration, I've got a beer table and a location table The beer table has the name of the beer in there. Do I want Bach or do I want Green Belt Light? And how many does the system have on hand? The location is the name of where you're standing, which means something to the person that's going to deliver the beer, some code name, and then a description, which means something to the human that's ordering the beer. And then we have another table that has the order information in there. Okay? When the order came in, when the order was filled, where it's going to, what beer is going out, how many. The two applications I'm going to show, the first one we had to create 4 content types. On the first one, we have a beer inventory maintenance page. That's where before the thing ever starts, they go in and load how many beers are in the menu and how many bottles they're going to start out with. Then we have a location maintenance page. They put in all the different places people could be where their servers couldn't find them. Then we have a content type that allows them to place orders, and a content type that allows the servers to view the orders that are outstanding and the ones that are complete. Later on, when we get into the part where everything's mashed into one database, we're doing the same thing. Up here we have one content type and one page that does that product. We're going to hard code all that PHP stuff ourselves. Down here, think of this as almost, it's kind of a object-oriented programming thing. Every entry I make into Drupal will be a beer or be a location. So I'm going to, even though I have one content type of beer, I will have one instance of that. I'll have a page that will be Bach and X number of bottles. I'll have another page that will be Green Belt Light, so many bottles, and so on down the line. Same thing with the orders. Every order, think of it as another post on that front page, so they're not showing up on the front page. And then lastly, there's a block out there, Peter was talking about blocks, that has a view into the database of all the orders that have been created and whether they've been filled or not.
So that's for the bar master.
Right. The only thing that the user sees in both cases is the place beer order page. The other 3 are only visible to the guys working behind the scenes. So you can think of this as a typical order fulfillment system. If it's not beer, it could be menus or lunch at a restaurant. It could be packages in a warehouse. Again, this is all the reference stuff. And if you basically write down, and I can give you these links when we get done here, when we get back to school on Monday, I'm going to post all this stuff on one of our school servers. Okay, I was still making changes last night, and the hotel where I was at had a much slower wireless than even this place does. So I gave up any hope of trying to download this stuff to the server. But I can give you this information when we get done. All right, so we're going to look at, I have on my machine here, some VMware running. And of course, this is not going to fit on the screen. Let's see if this will work.
I changed the resolution of my screen. It worked fine.
Oh, there we go. Magic.
That's one advantage of being at this one, I tell you.
This stuff works.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty up to date too. I wonder where they got these flat screen TVs from.
I don't know. Target.
On Black Thursday, huh?
Yeah.
Or Black Friday. Black Friday.
Okay. So here's the first one. In this MinneBar 1, this is the one where the application database is its own standalone process, and the CMS is off by itself. This is one of those database people like. Okay, we're going to go into admin. And I'll show you a little bit what we did here. So these are the content types we have. I have one additional type I didn't mention. This is just what I call a splash page. This is what everybody sees when the website first comes up. Okay, and all it says is click on over here to order a beer. Okay, so we have these 4 content types. I only have one actual page of each of those content types created. That's all I need. We might want to add some more in the future depending on the roles of the users. Maybe besides having one server that does setup and serving, maybe I want to have control access to this based on roles. So right now I just have all that sort of stuff lumped into one worker bee. The possibility is there to have multiple instances of each of these contact types. So these are the ones we have here. So we have one of each of the content types up and on the website. Let's take a look first at one of the setup pages. Yeah. I want to edit this guy here. So inside, what I did was I enabled PHP, and basically every one of these pages uses a similar technique. I just hard code all the typical PHP standard database access stuff with inside of it, and go to all the normal print statements to create your HTML. Okay, not pretty, not optimized. There's fancier ways to do this, but this makes it easy to explain to our guys back in school. And so what we end up with is the ability to add beers to the inventory, remove beers from the inventory, and change the quantity on hand. What else do you do with stuff in inventory? No matter if it's beer or widgets or automobiles, you put stuff in the inventory, you take stuff out, and you modify how much you have on hand. Okay, typical application. We have the same deal with locations. Code name for each one that means something to the server, and then a description for the humans. Just add them in, mark them, and delete them if you want to get rid of it. Okay, so this is all tied into that external database. Just for example, this is the page where they get to view the orders that are outstanding. So we have the normal MySQL connection strings. I'm using just the get here because we're worried about security. Get the stuff from the page, from the front side, do a form. This form allows the serving people to fill the order. Again, no different than filling an order in some fulfillment center for books or something. Build the query, run it, generate the HTML. All right. So that is the standard traditional way of doing it with database stuff, where the application is separate from the CMS. This one has it integrated into the database. So let's look at content types again. We go down to okay, so this is a beer content. Think of it as a beer object. Whenever I create a new one of these things, it has these fields. Peter kind of showed a little bit about how to do this in his. We're going to add in the description, quantity on hand. Fairly straightforward. what allows me to, let's go back to location is a similar operation. Let's go to the order. This gets a little more complex. Because now we have to get into something called entities. Under version 6, they had a different term for these. I think this referred to the nodes. But now the thing is in version 7 is called entities.
Which one is the entity?
Well, if you want to refer, like for example, this field, I want to give the user a drop-down box of all the possible locations. Back in version 6, under the old, when content creation was discrete by itself, you could tell it was a type. The type of field was type node, and you could go and fish through the nodes. Now you have to add another new module, 2 new modules that deal with entities, which is kind of a higher level than just a node. There's all sorts of other entities you can work with.
Okay.
And so it's an entity reference. So when you go out there, this is what it, let's see here, field settings. You tell it what type of entity you have. Now these are content types. So I told it I want to deal with my location content type. So that automatically populates that drop-down box.
Okay, so that's the first screen after you do the content type.
Right.
Okay.
So if I go back here to content, and
I haven't given a name to it, so
I want to
can't
add.
click it on submit.
I want to add content. Let's say I want to do a customer order. Okay, and I type in here Peter J. And you are sitting in at table E2, and you want some Pilsner, and you want 4. By doing this drop-down box,
there's 6 of us here. I'm going to share
yeah,
it.
most of you guys are old enough to drink.
No.
Be glad.
This drop-down box is tied through that.
For all of them.
The drop-down box is tied through that entity module to all the entities of type beer. This drop-down box is tied to all entities of type location. So whenever I create a new beer, this filter picks out just those, automatically populates that, so then I can select it, and I go down here and click on save, and it says, yeah, it functions the same way as taxonomy, but now, because I'm filtering just by content type.
Okay. I don't know this.
Yeah, well, this is something new. In fact, these 7 I saw these are still release candidate 1 stuff.
Can you filter an entity reference list without going to a view?
This is, let's see, yeah, this is not a view. This is actually just creating a content type.
It's CTK, isn't it?
Right.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and so then, but then view gives you a whole other.
Yeah, right.
But I asked if you filter the lists without, say, using a view.
Yeah, because that's what this is doing.
No, I mean filter the list so that if you didn't say want to allow people in section E3 for getting their beer.
Oh, I see what you mean. To put additional thing on top of that.
Yeah.
Now you only have one choice because when you're going to use this entity, it goes just by the type of entity, not the contents of, or because E2 would be the content of a field in that entity.
Right.
And so here I can only filter on the entity.
Whereas view you can filter.
And then you start on the content and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to sidetrack you, Tom, but would it be, so an alternative, let me see, an alternative would be to just do like a generic entity and then set it up in views then, right?
Yeah, you can do that.
With a taxonomy.
Yeah, I do a view here a little bit later.
Okay. And so they'd be like 2 alternatives for the same solution.
Yeah, what you have to do is have access to the underlying objects, or entities as they call them. And then you can filter them. If you want to filter just on the object type, you use this entity business.
Okay.
If you want to filter on the content of a field inside that entity, then you can use a view.
So it's letting us be even more granular than before.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I haven't done the filtering on taxonomy yet, although that would be a similar possibility. Yeah. So that created that order. Okay. So now we go out to administration, or go out to let's say we're a waiter, and we want to look at. Let me just log out here as a waiter. We'll take a look at the view.
Yeah, let the waiter be administrative.
Okay, so Peter J, you've got the oldest orders on the top. Okay? To fill that order, for example, you now know, or the server knows that they've got to deliver 4 Pilsners to Peter J, who's at location E2. When they do that, they come in here and click on Edit and go down there and check the box and save it. And then it's marked as filled. All right, so how do we do that? This section down here is a block as opposed to the other ones just being various pages. So you log out here and go back into administration. Structure, views. And so I've got a couple views out there that just let in this case, the servers look at what locations and what orders are out there. So let's take a look at this thing. Now this page gets a little messy. And this is what I mean about more complex. There's so much stuff you can do here, and it's not really clear. It takes a long time to kind of read through the tutorials on these to kind of get this stuff figured out. But basically what we want to do is we want to have the output look like a table. So that's fairly straightforward. The fields, these are the fields within the various objects that I'm going to look at with the view. And so if I want to add one of those, these are all the fields within all the content types in the database.
You know, if I just did a post here, personally, when I'm in views, I just want to get out of views and write an SQL statement.
That's actually what it's doing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's generating behind the scenes.
If you close the X area in the top right, I think it will actually show
Yep.
you.
It'll show the SQL, yeah.
Yeah, you can go up here and look at this one
Oh,
here.
that's where they put
Export
it. They used to put
Yeah.
it down right at the bottom.
Yeah, so let's let you see the SQL statement and generates.
But that's what I want to do. I just want to type in my inner join and,
Yep.
and be done with it. I hate clicking on all this stuff. But
So here's where the filter comes in.
Right.
Right now, I want to look at the stuff that's published and of type here. I can also add in other constraints. There's all sorts of stuff here I can filter on. Let's say if I only want to find the ones that are still open.
Yeah.
Let me find the node is on custom. Here we go. So this guy here. So I want to filter on whether the order's been filled or not, and that's part of the customer order node or entity. Come down here, apply that. Now it says, okay, is empty, is not empty, is one of. Okay, I only want it to show ones that are
open.
Oh, that's right. I only because I don't care about the filled ones. Yep.
Right.
And you can expose it to the bartender so they can change any of those three.
Yep.
I love
keep it to
that.
myself or show the bartender, or whatever roles you want to do that to.
Yeah.
When the drunk says you didn't actually give me a beer.
This is so much fun using beers.
So here we have
This wouldn't be near as much fun.
filled equals open, right? Sort. You want to sort the stuff. You can add all this other stuff, the typical design stuff to the views. So again, this is generating that SQL query behind the scenes.
Troy, look at the SQL query just so you can see what those few button clicks got us. That's all the status bar.
Let me save this here first,
Oh, good idea.
just in case things go south.
That never happened to me.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. That's what we just created.
Yep.
Now, to my students in here, that's what a real SQL statement looks like.
We're still going. We're still going.
This is the PHP that generates the SQL.
Yep.
Oh, okay, sure. Still.
But there is another link in here someplace to actually look at the details.
Yeah,
there is.
yes. Where's that?
I've seen it before.
Page, homepage, disable.
Yeah, they
There was
moved
another
it-
option right here.
They moved it in,
Yeah.
yeah, it used to be part of the preview.
Yeah, that's right. It was down here. You can look at it now.
That's all right.
Where did they put it? That's gonna drive me crazy.
Well, okay, let edit view name description again. See, is it up there?
Here.
Or isn't it in
No.
advanced?
Maybe analyze? I have no idea. That's not it.
No, that's where it goes. It
Yeah, I
goes and
don't know
optimizes
where
the
it is.
SQL statement.
And
Google would tell us.
So anyway, so this is basically the difference. You want to handwrite your code and run it inside the content of a page. You want these guys to generate it for you.
Now,
What's your preferences?
I'd like to point out a couple other advantages of having Drupal do it, even though it combines everything. I understand that messing everything together, but Drupal automatically has internationalization built in.
Yep.
So when you're drinking beer over in Germany, it's in the right language. It also
Yeah, just run the translation module.
And the security stuff you talked about, that's all built in.
Yep.
And those two right there would make me say, okay, I'm fine with all my beer being mixed together in the same bucket. With my data.
You can have all the pages cached in varnish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So without performance, there's really no clear answer.
No.
I can tell you right off that the performance of the PHP filter trying to PHP directly is going to kill any kind of caching that you might do. Versus doing it through view.
Some more opinions? You guys in the back are awful quiet. I thought the reason why I thought about this one is that, again, working down in our part of little flyover land down there, we don't have a lot of large companies, and a lot of them, they want to do this stuff. These are things that you got to think about. They hire our graduates. We've got a bunch of guys running around down there who do web page design and this sort of stuff. Peter gets them all squared away so they can go into business, and then they have to, are we going to do this inside of the CMS? Are we going to do it outside? Just think from the security standpoint for a minute. If I have one database, and when I say information security, that doesn't mean somebody hacking in, but the reliability of the database and putting all your eggs in one basket. If you're religious about doing backups and stuff on this, not a problem if the thing crashes. If you have two databases and you have, I hardly ever mess with my CMS website. I might back that up once a week or something like that. My application database, maybe I back that up every night. So there are some other considerations here.
And you're doing more of an application as opposed to a content management where
Right.
people are adding stuff in who knows when.
Yeah, this is not a blog. This is not a newsletter website. This is actually, let's say, inventory control, fulfillment, personnel management, stuff like that.
One other point to consider is when somebody let's say our students go in and they set it up, if they do the standard Drupal, like you showed, and they get hit by a beer truck, excuse the metaphor, then the next person that comes in should, if they understand Drupal, they should be able to go right in. If they don't understand Drupal, they're going to have to refigure out that whole system, that customized.
You'd have to have MySQL people and that kind of stuff, or
so
whatever underlying
it
database.
changes who you can hire and how fast they can come up to speed too.
Talking about performance and stuff, though, is you have to have a machine or machines fast enough to deal with not only the content management side, but all the application stuff running underneath there too. If your application is really getting hit hard and doing a lot of work, I know I've never tested it. We've not had a case that's tested
That's
like
why
that.
we all use GoDaddy.
Oh, I see.
Oh no.
But I was thinking, because if your application database fields and that sort of stuff is really, really busy, would it slow down the response time for the entire CMS?
So we have opcode caching,
Okay.
varnish, APC. There's lots of solutions actually that a lot of people do just to try to save themselves the pain as they go through a third-party hosting provider that does Drupal professionally, like Pantheon or Octave Cloud, and then they'll do all of those things for you. But certainly, if you're savvy enough, you'll learn a lot of the techniques and tricks that will speed everything up, so none of that affects you.
And then aside from the performance issues and the database mingling issues, we come down to if you want to do stuff that Drupal can't do, user interface stuff, then you're more or less forced into the other side of the thing. But never, who knows? People are doing more and more modules these days. They might come up with something that will.
Well, then in that case, you could write your own module to do the interface that you need.
That'd be good.
Or take an existing module and build on it. Even better idea.
Yep. So again, there's no school solution to this. This is just to bring up some discussing points and some things to think about when you're going out there. Do I want to have my own little MySQL standalone database that I interact with on command line? from home using PuTTY, or do I want to have everything inside, run everything inside Drupal? And I don't think there's a standard answer to that. Depends if you have the Drupal guys or not.
Certainly this stuff, this and WordPress is kind of great for them to small organizations.
Yes.
And to your point before, let's say you hired a kid from school, and then 2 years later, a kid from school goes on to work somewhere else.
Yep.
All you need to say is Drupal or WordPress or something.
Or something
Someone
like that.
doesn't feel-
Well, it's the continuity, that's definitely another plus then.
Yeah, you don't have to understand.
It's industry standard. Yeah.
Or you could have saved yourself a lot of trouble and just picked up the Drupal commerce distribution and just had it mostly coded already before you start working with it.
Yep. And then just put in beer as opposed to books or flower pots or whatever.
MP3s.
Yeah. So that's all I got, unless you guys just want to talk about stuff.